tax reform in just a moment. But first, I want to go back to the failed health care bill, Graham-Cassidy. Where does the GOP go from here?
Doesn't the name of that bill sound like a 60s band?
It does.
Like I was listening to some Graham-Cassidy the other day.
Well, you're thinking of David
Cassidy. Yeah, yeah, please don't bring the Partridge Family in.
Well, yeah.
But that's about the only thing that was left out of this. Listen, this has been a failure for Republicans. Just as difficult as it was for President Obama to pass health care reform. If you remember, it was Christmas Eve when Blanche Lincoln cast the deciding vote for cloture. You see Republicans grappling with this, and it rests at the feet of John McCain, who has chosen who campaigned on repeal and replace, but has dug his heels in on this issue. So for Republicans, this is this second defeat is a real blow for Mitch McConnell, especially when you consider the special election in Alabama, where you saw Roy Moore, the very controversial former Chief Justice of the Alabama State Supreme Court. He's elected. That sends a signal that Steve Bannon left the White House specifically to target 5 or 6 so-called establishment Republicans. And so we'll see what going forward, but not a good week for Mitch McConnell. And interestingly enough, I think the president has pivoted on this issue in that now it's the failure of Congress to act, and he's been able to shift the blame for that. So.
Well, and I would tend to agree that there's only so much the president could have done. And I think that he was pretty distant from this entire process from the start. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think that his party will respond to what they think his delivery was on this, because he too campaigned on this, and it is ultimately his failure. John McCain took a lot of heat for this, but I think that there's some respect and some credit due to him, because if he had legit concerns with what the Republicans were attempting to pass, that was his right to say so. He was doing what was best for the American people in his eyes, but he's taking a lot of heat right now from his own party, and I think that the Republicans have learned a valuable lesson here. Do not overpromise. You will underdeliver, because Bill just pointed out how hard this is. Healthcare reform is difficult, and they just learned this the hard way. The Democrats learned the hard way too.
So what happens next? I mean, we're probably looking at 2018 before anything really gets done.
Listen, I think for Senate Republicans, the big deal is primary season that comes up middle of next year. The reality here is they're going to move on to 2 or 3 other issues. You could see immigration reform pass. You could most definitely, I think you'll see tax reform passed on a grand scale. So healthcare reform takes a back seat. And as I said, that's a blow to the so-called establishment Republicans, and specifically Mitch McConnell.
Healthcare reform definitely takes a back seat, because the Trump administration is definitely focused on what their one victory could possibly be since he's taken office. It is not going to be healthcare reform. That is why the Republicans are going to pivot so strongly to tax reform, and that also will not be easy. So it's really a challenging environment. All of this discord lies within the Republican Party. It's hard to spin and place any of this on the Democrats. Sorry, guys.
It is. Listen, it's become an intensely partisan battle, but that, of course, the way Washington has been that way for some time. For Republicans, it boils down to this. If you're in a primary, will you receive a primary challenge from a more conservative Republican? And so that's really now the battle for the soul of the Republican Party, sort of outsiders versus insiders.
More to come next week. They will join us next Friday.
It's National
Bill
Coffee
and
Day,
Jessica.
too.
Yeah.
It's
National
Coffee Day. Cheers. It's a holiday here on the morning show.
Yes.
Westrock Coffee, free coffee throughout the morning. The
Very
locations
neat.
on our website. We love some Westrock. We'll be back with more after the break.